Well, over the last few decades, the sentiment about life in the womb has shifted in America. And according to a new Gallup poll, those who consider themselves pro-choice is now the highest it's been since 1995. In fact, 52% of people surveyed actually consider abortion to be morally acceptable. Here to make sense of all this is former Planned Parenthood director and founder of And Then There Were None, Abby Johnson. Abby, it's great to have you back on the show. So this poll showing that we have more people now than ever who consider themselves to be pro-choice, which I would call pro-abortion, in over 20 years, or almost 20 years. What do you attribute this to, that people are now considering themselves to be more pro-choice?
Well, I think you sort of have to look at the demographic of people that they're surveying. So, number one, they surveyed people in Chicago. So that certainly plays a factor in who they're looking at and who they're talking to. Yeah, I've never been surveyed in one of these things. I would love to be surveyed. I've never been asked, but I've never been surveyed. But you have to sort of look at the survey. You have to look at who they're talking to. I would say that the bulk of the people that they interviewed for this are actually baby boomers, and those are the people that are heavily pro-abortion. We know, looking at data, looking at statistics, that people that are sort of the younger generation, those are the most movable when it comes to the abortion issue, because they're so science driven, they're so fact driven and logic driven. And so these baby boomers are the ones that are really not very movable on this issue, but those are the ones, if you actually look at the stats of this poll, they represent the highest group of people that were talked to.
So what you're telling me is that the younger generation, there's hope for them, which is it's very encouraging. I will say, when I look at this poll, it shows that people think that it's morally acceptable. 52%, as I mentioned. Do you think that has anything to do with the fact that the left has really made this about women's rights, women's health? I mean, even calling it a choice, dehumanizing the baby, making it seem like it's just a piece of tissue in there. Because if you think it's a piece of tissue, then to you, who cares? It is morally acceptable.
Well, yeah, of course, Lindsay. I mean, look, I mean, we have such disingenuous arguments going on here, right? We have a Supreme Court justice during the Dobbs argument, Sotomayor, saying with a straight face that in the past 50 years, there have been no medical breakthroughs in the field of maternal fetal medicine. I mean, that could not be more untrue, right? Hello, we have ultrasound technology. We have doctors actually performing surgeries on babies in the womb, but people are believing what other people are saying, right? They're believing these lies. They're believing this nonsense, and they're not looking at the issue on its face. They're not looking for the truth. And so absolutely, when you have a Supreme Court justice spouting these lies to the American public, why wouldn't they believe that there hasn't been any technology? Why wouldn't they understand that by 21 days post-conception, there's a heartbeat in the womb? Why wouldn't they understand that a baby is dreaming dreams in the womb, that there's fingerprints on this child by 8 to 9 weeks? Why wouldn't they understand it? Because the left has been so incredibly intellectually dishonest about that baby in the womb.
That's a good point. Intellectually dishonest. I like that, because when you really talk about the science, which is so important, what you're just describing there, it's hard. You can't deny the fact if something has all these elements. If it looks like a baby, acts like a baby, it probably is a baby here. I will say that when you get granular, and this is what I bring up a lot of times, and you talk to people on a one-on-one basis, you can see that most people actually don't want abortion after a certain time. Even, in fact, this year, there was a Marist poll that came out that showed that 71% of Americans, including 70% of independents and 49% of Democrats, want abortion to be limited most of the time. And if you really look, it's after usually 12 weeks, which is when we know that they have all their vital organs and so forth. I mean, is this where the conversation really needs to head, to be one-on-one with people? Or how do you really get people to have those conversations about the science and get past these talking points of the left?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times it is just one-on-one conversations. Look, I mean, we're not going to win these conversations on Facebook, okay? You're not going to win a debate about abortion on Facebook or social media. It's just not going to happen. But a lot of times it's one-on-one. And listen, 1 in 3, 1 in 4 women in the United States have had abortions. So, I mean, we're dealing with a very wounded culture. So, we're dealing with a culture of women, a lot of older women who believe the lie that it wasn't a baby inside of their womb. And so, we have to understand that. And we as pro-lifers, as Christians, as people of faith, we can't come at them with like really harsh language, right? I mean, we have to understand that they may have been deceived too. And so we have to have those one-on-one conversations. We have to have some understanding that they may have been deceived by the abortion industry, but we need to be holding the abortion industry accountable. Nobody's talking about the fact that women that have abortions are 6 times more likely to commit suicide. Nobody's talking about the fact that there are women that literally lose their fertility because of the negligence inside of these abortion facilities. Abortion facilities are not held accountable. They are not held to the same standards as every other medical facility in this country. Somebody needs to be having that conversation.
It's so important that you bring this up, Abby. I mean, you were the director of a Planned Parenthood for years. And if anyone understands it, it is you. And we have the left saying that they care about women, they care about women's health. But when you really go down to brass tacks, they don't care about women's health because they are not showing the truth about what really happens when a woman ends a pregnancy and having these honest conversations. And you're right, there are people who had abortions and we need to be kind and